In today's video, we're going to be having a look on the round 6th of the World Championship match between Liren and Jan Nepomniachtchi, and oh man, what a round it was. I mean, let's be honest, the main reason why I'm actually covering this game is because we get to see one of my favorite opening, and probably if you're onto this video, one of your favorite openings as well, in action at the highest stake possible of the game. So we're talking about the London system. And this is a pretty interesting moment because I get this question quite a lot because the London system has a reputation, let's say, of something that is maybe very nice and playable for beginners, but people are not super sure how far, let's say, they can get with the London system. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the game. I'm going to be giving you my thoughts as an international master and someone who spent over 1,000 hours at least working on a London system course that won the Course of the Year award. And I'll try to keep everybody up to date to what the theoretical state of this opening is. So first of all, we see an interesting move order because Ding Liren starts with a knight. As you already know, most of the London system players would generally begin with a bishop on the very second move. Now, the main reason for why I personally believe that Ding Liren is not rushing with such move is that he is not quite sure whether he's willing to, let's say, enter the Benoni lines, or perhaps he doesn't want to play King's Indian where he has the bishop already committed to f4. So, by playing knight f3, he is still somewhat flexible, saying that, all right, if Jan Nepomniachtchi goes back to, let's say, his old habit of playing the Grunfeld, he is ready to just play c4, then go bishop g7, and we're back into something that Ding Liren plays quite a lot, either the Mar del Plata variation with e4, or, let's say enter any kind of Grunfeld. For example, this setup with bishop to e3 is something that Ding Liren has played in the past. So I'm just making the assumption that this is something he could have very well tried to play for. However, in the game, we see a way more solid approach by Jan Nepomniachtchi, who goes d5. And now we get to see the bishop to f4, which is basically the introductory position for the London system. And it's a pretty interesting position because Jan Nepomniachtchi has the choice of playing g6, which is kind of a sneaky move order to get back into, let's say, his beloved Grunfeld. But he does not play for this, and this is something that a lot of, let's say, strong players have used in the past. Like let's say, one example that comes to mind is the game between Jan Krzysztof Duda and Fabiano Caruana. But instead, he goes for the what I believe to be the most mainlinely approach by going c5. We see e3 because black has a threat of taking in the center and he's throwing the pawns. So we just want to be able to retake back. And now we see the knight. And this is the position where 80% of the beginners usually go wrong because they don't really know what they're doing and they just play the move c3. Trying to set up this sort of famous pawn triangle in the London, which is known to not be ideal because it gives black the option of playing a move such as queen b6. And then it is actually not very easy to protect that pawn on b2. You don't want to play something like b3. And going queen b3 gives black the option of playing c4. The endgames are known to be very comfortable for black. And if you go back, the key move that black has in this position is quite annoying to deal with. Bishop to f5. Main point obviously being take the bishop, he takes on b2, and then the rook gets trapped. So that is no good. So for this reason, Ding Liren plays something different. And that is the move knight bd2. This is sort of the pro way of playing the London system nowadays. And as I said it in the past, the London system is in a position and a theoretical state better than ever. One of the main reasons for why is that happening is specifically aimed against this queen b6 move. Main point being that on queen b6, compared to the previous position, now white has a very interesting option, which is going for d takes on c5, which is really the huge difference. Now, simply taking back allows a3, b4, and white gets a very nice edge. Easy to play and pretty straightforward. So queen takes on b2 is, let's say, the critical test. Now, the move is rook b1, queen c3, bishop to b5. And in this position, black has to be precise. Queen c5 is known to be a typical mistake because of ideas like c4 and then queen to a4, and black gets good play. So they are supposed to go e6, and then after castles, bishop e7 is the precise way. But recently, thanks to Lila Zero, white came with this sort of innovative approach that really makes the London system more than playable in Grandmaster games, and as we see nowadays, even in World Championship matches, which is e4. And e4 is a very interesting move because, first of all, you may be wondering, all right, what is up with de4? Well, that just lost you the game because of knight c4. You go ahead, be my guest, take on f3, but you're going to find your queen trapped after rook b3 because knight c4, it's just cutting away the only escaping square where they could have gone. So rook b3 just wins for white. Now, of course, black is not forced to allow this and they can simply ignore it and castle. But I do believe that white is getting very interesting positions in the following forced lines after something like e5, knight back, knight b3. This is kind of forced theory. I already had a lot of games with this myself. And in this position, we can continue with something like rook e1. White is down a pawn technically, but we have ideas to swing the rook over. And man, the initiative really plays itself. And I think the bishop on c8 is not really that happy. So this is one of the main variations and the main contribution of Lila Zero, making the London system better than ever nowadays. And for that little reason, the black players need to sort of switch to something different. And Yanni Pomniachi decides to go for cd4 and bishop to f5. And this is quite important because it may be tempting to play bishop f5 without having taken on d4, which is seemingly like a very normal kind of looking natural move. Those were a lot of words saying the same thing, but you get the point. Where I can try to be cheeky and go for dc5, which is known to be quite annoying, especially after e6, knight d4, as I recommend in my course and as we showed on the channel many times in the past, or maybe even the somewhat recent discovery that white has a very interesting pawn sacrifice with b4, which, hey, maybe it could be an update to the course in the future. So for that reason, black is known to kind of have to take if they are willing to play this bishop f5 approach. Now white simply went for c3, we have e6, and then here it's kind of the first interesting moment of the opening because Liren kind of deviates for what most of the people would be expecting. And he plays the move bishop to b5. Now, the main reason why is that so interesting is, well, with e6, black is just known to prepare the move bishop to d6, exchanging the bishops and getting an equal position. So for this reason, most people have gone for queen b3, myself included. And this is also the main recommendation that I have in the course. And the main reason is pretty simple. A lot of your opponents, if you're like a casual player, they're just going to go queen b6, which if you remember to go for the standard reaction, taking on b6, followed by bishop to b5, it could give you like so many easy wins, you have no ideas. Like we've literally had this kind of motive like knight e5, take bishop a6, and then pick up the pawns, rook d8, bishop c7 kind of ideas. I've got like a lot of free wins below 2000 with this in the rating climbs with the London system that we did on the channel. So queen b6 is known to not be great. Another funny way to lose for black is queen d7, because we do have knight e5. And a lot of your opponents are simply going to take, and then after de, the knight has to move, and bishop b5 is about to pick up the queen, so we are winning at least a piece. And queen b3 is kind of known to sort of force queen c8, where white has the interesting choice of going knight h4. and just chasing the enemy bishop. So it's not a lot, but it is definitely something to work with. White could potentially, let's say, bring the king, and then the bishop pair is quite a nice asset to have in these lines. But recently, and this is probably, I would be guessing, the main reason why Ding Liren did not go for queen b3. And that is the move bishop to d6, which is literally just ignoring white's threat. Queen b7, bishop f4, queen c6, their plan is to go king f8. And black is down a pawn, they have the bishop pair, but they get very interesting compensation in these variations. It is just a mess, it's equal according to the computer, and it's definitely not something that I would really recommend you to enter. So in the course, the approach of dealing with this move would be just to take more of like a positional sort of path like Ding Liren did in the game, and just castle, play with a4 with a balanced game, but quite easy to play. Have a lot of moves like just continuing with play on the queen side. So yeah, if you're planning to go queen b3, and I would really recommend you do that if, let's say, you're somebody that is below 2300, I think that is going to be giving you quite a nice advantage. And yeah, very few of your opponents will know the move by move stuff related to bishop to d6. So you will be getting a lot of the other stuff mainly. But, you know, being in a world championship match, you kind of expect your opponent to know the best. So you cannot just go out there queen b3 hoping that maybe they're not going to play bishop to d6 there, sacrificing. No, they will. So for this reason, Ding Liren just goes for the other approach, playing the move bishop to b5. And we have bishop to d6. Bishop trade castle, castle by black. And now, well, this was a bit of an interesting moment because Jan Nepomniachtchi did pause for a couple of minutes here. Going a6, I consider it to be rather dangerous, especially if you consider taking back with a pawn, because an idea like b4 could be definitely very dangerous. Just imagine a knight lands onto c5. Could already be a pretty funny situation for black, where the bishop on f5, it's kind of very good, but in the same time doing nothing, because it just has no way to battle out the knight that will land on the c5 square. This would definitely be quite risky. Instead, we just see castles, rook to e1, h6, white is getting the typical knight on e5, we see knight back, a4, typical move expanding on the queen side, bishop's under attack, so we just slide back, and this is kind of the decisive mistake, if you ask me, because Jan Nepomniachtchi played the move knight d7. Which, as you probably already know, in case you watch the live footage, or if you are here for the first time, it did allow knight d7 a5. And what do I mean with decisive mistake? It's a decisive mistake in a way that it really impacts his chances of ever being active in the game. So what I mean with that is, it's going to be very hard for black to ever play this game for a win now. They're mainly just in kind of defensive mood after white manages to shut down their queenside play. So, in order to avoid this, they had to play very awkward move and risky in general. This is what a computer recommends, just do a5. It's ugly, you're weakening b5, but hey, you're not allowing white to fix these pawns that can become targets in the later phase of the game. So, we see knight d7, knight trades, Ding is fixing these pawns, queen to c7, queen to f3, very nice move, just kind of activating and staying flexible. Rook c8, rook a3, once again, not really showing his intentions, maybe rook b3, maybe knight b3, maybe he wants to play b4 and this is covered, so you never know. Bishop goes back, knight to b3, preparing some knight c5 business. And now we see a queen trade, which is an interesting moment because Jan can definitely go ahead and take, but it is going to be a pretty one-sided affair. In hindsight, maybe this could have been a better try, but still definitely very unpleasant. So he tries to keep queens on the board, going for a little bit more dynamic play. We see h4, rook to e8, Knight activates, and now we see the move e5, which is really such a common idea in all this kind of like London system type of games. Just to give you an example, this could be a typical endgame that can arise from this structure. Just take as an example this position from the typical endgames chapter of my course, where black just, has a very passive position and tries to free himself with e5. You could scroll through the moves. Like later on, you're gonna get a situation like this where they do have the isolated pawn, but black is quite active. Nevertheless, white should be able to get very decent pressure. And yeah, here we just have a very kind of textbook example by Garakamsky, who just squeezed his opponent with this kind of like constant theme. If black ever goes for like a queen trade, which this is one of the main reasons why he declined it in the game, this kind of stuff where white manages to fix black's queenside pawns can easily be lost. I'm not gonna like go too much into detail on how to win these end games, but I will just say that it is very one-sided, and white has a very nice time playing these kind of positions. However, in our game, we still have a situation that is a little bit more dynamic. So, game continued after e5. We see rook to b3, hitting the b7 pawn. And already like a very forcing situation could appear on the board. And in fact, it did after knight takes on a5. Allowing rook e5, and then we're going to see what happened in the game. But first of all, I'm here asking myself, okay, why cannot black just, let's say, defend their pawn with a move like rook b8? I'm wondering. And then the computer is like, no, this is not good, bozo. He can just play rook b6, and maybe you're going to get hit by bishop a6, rook c6 after, and white just wins. So this would have not really helped. And in fact, what Jan Nepomniachtchi has played, it is the best defensive try. So the following moves are being kind of forced. k3 hitting the knight, eliminating the annoying fork. And now Ding goes for h5, which according to the computer may have been a slight inaccuracy. Anyways, this game contained a couple of mistakes, but don't really want to go too much into what the computer thinks could have been done better. Like, for instance, here rook takes on e5 was an alternative, and then queen to d8, highlighting a funny perpetual. If you take queen to d1, queen h5, and queen e5 could be just a draw. Like, for instance, this is an example. Else you cannot escape the perpetual. Some pretty crazy variations out there. Still, white does not have to allow this and can play the move queen f3 and still keep a better position. But you get the point. So in the game, see the move bishop to c2, knight takes on b7, and now the very stylish knight d6. Hitting the rook, saying queen d6 allows rook e8, and then pick up the queen, so that will be no good. We see rook e5, queen takes e5, queen takes on b2, and now the move rook a5, which is very precise. Still, I'm kind of surprised. Surprised and maybe shocked in the same time that knight c4, queen c1, and then bishop d3 would have gave black enough counterplay. So Ding correctly stays away from that and finds rook a5. We see the move king to h7, and then rook to c5 gets played. And this move is a little bit of an inaccuracy. However, it is going to be very hard for somebody to find a move like queen e1, which according to the computer would have been the best. And still, I'm having a little bit of a hard time explaining how you can come up with this move. The only kind of possible scenario I see somebody able to find like such variation is, let's say, if all the other continuations are bad, and then you're just like, okay, let me play something prophylactic, defending the pawn and defending against checks. But as Ding noticed during the game, he can potentially try and look for a kingside attack, which definitely made him stick with active play. We see queen c1 check. Apparently this was also a little bit of an inaccuracy. Computer thinks taking followed by bishop to d3 would have given black decent chances for survival. Don't ask me how. But we do see queen c1, king up, f6, queen g3. The following moves now are just incredibly precise by white. Knight takes on c4, collecting the pawn. Knight to e3, very good find. Not allowing rook c7, queen g5 by any means, so cutting away the enemy queen. Bishop goes to b1, rook c7 threatening mate in 1, and after rook g8, knight d5, creating a monster threat of knight takes on f6. King slides back, rook to a7. Hitting the pawn, black advancing. Now we have knight e7. And at this point, white is attacking the enemy rook, but we also get to move 40. So for those of you that are not aware what the time format is, basically at this point players are very low on time, but they do get an additional extra hour each after move 40. So at this point, Ding is having a completely winning position with a lot of time on the clock, which is basically everyone's dream, playing a World Championship match. I would assume at least. So Jan plays rook f8, and here after a while, Ding plays the move d5. There are a lot of winning continuations for white, but that is less relevant. This is completely winning, and do not give credit to the chess.com trainer who says d5 is a mistake. We see a2, so black trying to get some counterplay. And now queen c7 is very precise. And you have to really give Ding some credits for finding this move, because the path to win is pretty narrow after this. Because in the following variation, after king h7, well, what this does, it's basically threatening knight g6 and then queen g7 mate. And believe it or not, at this point, only one move is winning for white. And why not? Be my guest, try to pause the video and put yourself in Ding's shoes. Try to see if you can find the winning continuation. The others are gonna allow a draw. But he quite flawlessly finds the move queen f7, which is just ending the game on the spot. One of the key details being that, let's say you do something like this, queen g8 is gonna be leading to a typical mating net, because the pawn on d5 is taking away the e6 square. And hey, here you see why Ding advanced that pawn in the first place. Of course, another motive could be rook g8, queen f7, take on g6, yeah, pawn takes, and then here you have another pretty little motive, queen g8, followed by the back ranker, and this would have very well as well worked. So this was game 6. Super happy to see some redemption for the London system. I think no other better way of getting a comeback in a must-win situation, playing the London system. The main goal of the London system was not to, let's say, kill Nepo from the opening, but I do believe the main goal was to get a playable position with a lot of pieces on the board. And this is exactly what happened. I think Ding wanted to stay a little bit away from the Catalan because let's say Nepo's handling of the Catalan was quite impressive for the match against Magnus. So it is definitely something he quite looked at pretty in depth. And this, I would assume, came as a pretty nice surprise weapon. But hey, you never really know what to expect from these matches. Happy to see that we do get to have the London system for the first time in a World Championship match. So hope you guys enjoy the coverage, and I'll see you around on the channel. Take care.